Hi everyone, Hannah here. So today I thought I would make a bit of a video, and basically what my topic is today is, some of you may recall a while ago I put up a post on my Instagram page talking about my frustrations of being a dressage rider who, every time I go to a different coach, I get new information that is different. Like, what I mean is, I feel like every time I go to a different coach, that coach tells me to ride differently, train differently, and I feel like some of the things I learn from different coaches, they contradict each other, and then I end up really confused because I don't really know how I should be riding, like who's right, who's wrong, who should I be listening to. I feel like it's not clear cut, and for me I find that really frustrating because I feel like I always get stuck, because I feel like every time I go to a new coach, I'm at the same place I was before with the other coach, because they're telling me, oh, hang on, we need to do this differently and that differently, if that makes sense. So anyway, I thought what I would do is I would, for once and for all, find an answer, and I thought, it'd be helpful for all of us if I would share this with you as well, what I've learned. Mind you, as I'm doing this video, I'm pretty much like answering these questions in my own head as well. So it's helping me, helping you, and well, it's fun. So let's get into it. Okay, so I'm not going to be in this video, like you won't see me, because I want the focus to be on the board, because the board is really important for me to be able to explain this to you. But obviously you'll still hear me, so that's okay. Anyway, so I think where I wanted to start off this conversation was something that, my main coach, I guess, like the coach who I think, helps me the most with my riding. The one, because I asked her this question myself, actually a few weeks ago. I was like, how, I get confused because different coaches tell me to do something different. So how do I know who do I listen to and that sort of thing? And basically she said to me, well, look at your theory. Look at your theory. So like, you've got to ask yourself, when a coach is saying to you, okay, do this, you've got to go, does this make sense? Like, in theory, is this actually going to help, or is what they're telling me to do make absolutely no sense? Like, for example, not that anyone's ever told me to do this, I just thought I'd say this because this might be just make it very clear. Like, if I've got a coach who's saying to me, okay, give the horse long reins and absolutely no contact on their mouth, so like I've got loops in my reins, and this is going to get the horse to collect themselves. Yeah, so can you see how is the horse meant to get in that self-collection with loops in the reins and there's no contact on their mouth whatsoever? Like, all you're going to have is a horse that looks like they're about to go on a trail ride, like really strung out and all that, which is fine for a trail ride, but if you're trying to get that self-collection, yeah, that doesn't make any sense in theory. Not that anyone's ever told me to do that, but I thought that was, like, as I said, just a good example. Yeah, so going from that, your first thing you need to ask yourself with whatever coach you ever have is ask yourself, does what they're telling me to do, does that make sense in theory? Like, in theory, would this help and actually make this work for me and my horse? Okay, so as I said before, you have to ask yourself with whatever your different coaches tell you to do. I do this, I will start to do this, I should say, after every lesson I have with a coach, whether it's the same coach or a different coach. I'll write down or think about, what I learned, what the coach was telling me to do, what we were trying to achieve, and then basically ask myself, in theory, is that actually going to work? Does that actually make sense? So again, that's something I recommend that you guys do too, because I think that's going to help heaps. So I thought staying on the topic about asking yourself, in theory, will this work? I thought I would do a bit of an example. So Theory, you might say, okay, so theory can be very basically, using this example I used before, there's no way you're going to achieve self-collection if you've got loops in your reins, right? Yeah, so looking at the theory in that way. But there's also other theory. Now, I don't know the theory behind other equestrian disciplines. Like, I don't know the theory behind cross-country, show jumping, any of the Western pleasure stuff. I don't know at all because it's not my sport. I can only tell you what I've learned so far on my dressage journey, so that's the example I'm going to give you guys. But basically, so in dressage, the best thing that my coach who normally teaches me has ever done was give me some rules. So some of you may be familiar with the German training scale, which is basically this pyramid that I've got here. So in the German training scale, the first thing you need to achieve is rhythm. Then the next one is suppleness, contact, impulsion, straightness, and collection is at the very top. So when you see those Grand Prix horses, they have achieved collection, which is the very top that you can go in your German training scale pyramid. Okay, so that's one theory, I guess one bit of theory that, for a dressage rider, you should be very familiar with and understand and know. And then the other theory is, which you'll see over here, do you like my pointer? It's my dressage whip. But anyways, carrying on. So the next set of rules that you should know is basically what we call breaker rules. So breaker rules is, it doesn't matter whether your horse is an actual breaker, so like just being broken in, or whether it is like an educated dressage horse, for example, competing, Prix St. George, for example. You have to hop on that horse on that day and ask yourself, what do I have? And if that means you have to go back to breaker rules because you don't have any of these things, then so be it. So what are breaker rules? So breaker rules are, you need to make sure that the horse is traveling forward on their own. So what that means is if you put your leg on and ask the horse to go in the trot, canter, whatever, the horse goes with a little to no effort from a light aid, and they keep going with energy. Like, you shouldn't have to keep nagging, like kicking, like every stride going kick, 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 because if you don't, the horse is going to like drop to trot or stop. So that's what forward on his own means. Forward into 2 even reins means that the horse accepts your hand. So it basically means the horse isn't a giraffe. So they're not like, sticking their head up in the air and completely evading the contact. And when they talk about even reins, that has to do with the rider. So the rider making sure that they are riding with reins that are even in length, but more so even in weight and in contact. So you don't want to feel like your left rein is heavier than your right rein, because then what that's basically saying is that you're hanging on your left rein more than your right, if that makes sense. So that's what the even reins means. Steering. So steering is about control, is about shoulder control, and which, for you dressage riders will know, shoulder control is like one of the most important, components of dressage. If you don't have control of the horse's shoulders, there is no way you can do any of the movements or anything. So when we talk about the steering, we talk about pushing the shoulders and not pulling. So you guys will know, and I know before I started to understand this, the idea about shoulder control, and you'll see this with the beginners, you might do it still, I know I used to do it, but if I wanted to turn the horse to the left, I would think, okay, well the horse is going to go left wherever their head goes. So I'm going to pull my left hand to my left hip to turn their head and neck left. And that's how especially beginners ride, because we think, well, that's common sense, right? Head goes left, horse goes left, yeah? But when we talk about steering, we don't want to do that when we're riding, especially with the dressage. We want to think about pushing the shoulder. So what that means is, if you've ever heard people talk about turning the horse with your outside rein, this concept of push is what they are talking about. So if I wanted to turn my horse to the left, I'm not going to pull my left hand to left hip. What I'm going to do is using my outside rein, which would be my right rein, I'm going to slightly bring my outside rein a little bit to the inside, slightly, so not so much that your outside rein is crossing over the horse's wither, but slightly, and I might like vibrate, so give a bit of a vibration by squeezing and releasing on with my fingers, which is basically asking the horse to move their outside shoulder, which in that case, if they were going left, would be their right shoulder, and I'm asking them to push that shoulder a bit to the left, and that's how, you know, steering works in the dressage world. Okay, and then number 4 is about having an independent seat. So that has to do with the rider themselves. So that means, is the rider balanced? Is the rider hanging on the horse's mouth for balance? Is the rider sitting evenly in the saddle, or are they tipping one way or the other? So that has to do completely with the rider and their ability. Like even in the trot, like is the horse trotting off and doing their own, having their own tempo in the trot, or is the rider setting the tempo with their rise? So all of that comes under having an independent seat. So now I've sort of forgotten where I was heading off to. I got too excited explaining my breaker rules. Okay, so basically what I was saying, knowing theory like that, you can use your knowledge of the German training scale and your breaker rules to help you make sense of what each coach, you know, is telling you or has told you to do in the lesson, if that makes sense. So, you know, I'm going to use an example, which you'll see my example of my lovely coaches on the left. And these are things that, you know, that 3 different coaches have told me to do, and they're basically all trying to achieve the same thing, which I will get into and explain. So coach number 1, so what I should explain was what the goal of each of these coaches, each of these coaches was trying to achieve in these different lessons was to get the horse to take my hand. So not necessarily achieve collection, so not collection, connection I mean. So basically that on the bit form that we're all used to hearing. So on the bit basically. They were all trying to achieve that and get the horse to, like, you know, seek my hand rather than, you know, try to evade it by, tossing their head up basically. So that's what they were all trying to achieve, but in regards to how they were asking me, what they were asking me to do to achieve it was a little bit different. So coach number 1, so a bit of background with coach number 1. Coach number 1 is someone who I had lessons with, you know, for quite like a few years actually. And basically what they were actually very, very good at training young horses and breaking them in. So that's sort of their background. They do have dressage background, but they, you know, I guess where you could say where they were, you know, what their niche was or what they were really good with was really young horses. So, you know, so basically that's sort of, you know, where they were coming from with coaching me. So to get the horse to take my hand, what this coach would tell me to do was to ride the horse on a 20-meter circle. Just say the horse was going right, I was riding a 20-meter circle going to the left. They would tell me to put my inside rein, so my inside hand, so that would be my left hand, and rest it on my knee, and then take my outside rein a little bit wide. So there would be no loops in my reins, but my inside rein, and I'll include a picture because I actually have a picture of me riding my old horse like this, so you'll see what I mean. But my inside rein hand would be resting on that inside knee, so my left knee, outside hand would be open a little bit wide. Now, again, as I said before, what they were trying to help me achieve was to get the horse to accept my hand and to take the contact. So like to be happy with my hand, if that makes sense. Because unless the horse takes my hand, you can never ever achieve contact or connection, which is, if you look at the German training scale, the 3rd one, yeah? And if you look at the breaker rules, you know, what they were trying to help me achieve was number 2, which is forward into 2 even reins, because the horse wasn't taking my hand and that sort of thing. So thinking back, and before doing this video, I actually had to think about, you know, what each coach was trying to help me to achieve and where that makes sense. And they all do make some sense, if that makes sense. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So going back on to coach number 1, as I said, trying to get the horse to take my hand. So yeah, you've got to remember what coach number 1, you know, their background comes from training young horses. So by me resting my hand on my knee, taking my outside rein a bit wide, what that was helping me to do was to keep my hand still. Now remember, a horse that has not learnt to take the contact, you want to make your hands really inviting for that horse to seek the contact. So, by me resting my inside hand on my knee and taking my outside rein a little bit wider, what I was doing was helping myself to keep my hands really, really still, which was going to, again, make it really inviting for that horse to go to my hand. Which, thinking about in theory, hey, if my hand is still, yes, it's going to be more inviting for the horse to seek my hand. So yes, that does make sense in that regards. Now, carrying on to what, you know, Coach 1 was also making me to do was also by me making my outside rein a bit wider and having my inside rein on my knee. So basically by making my making my reins a little bit wider, what Coach 1 was trying to also help me to achieve was make my reins even in the contact. Which, if you look at the breaker rules, even reins. So that's again what we were trying to achieve. So by me making my reins a bit, wider, and you can try this on your own horse and you'll see what I mean. Go from your hands being close together and then making them wider. It can help you make your reins a little bit more even in the contact, if that makes sense. So going from what Coach 1 was saying, all this coach was telling me to do makes 100%, makes a lot of sense, right? So moving on to Coach 2. So Coach 2, I've actually only ever had maybe a few lessons with this person. I don't really remember. Anyways, so as I said, same goal as Coach 1 and as Coach 3 was to get the horse to accept my hand. So again, with Coach 2, I would be riding around in trot on a 20-meter circle, and when the horse lifted their head and was a bit evasive to my hand, the coach would ask me to open my outside rein. So just say I'm going to the left again, open my right rein, and with my inside rein, to lift my inside rein directly up a little bit. Sort of like a bit of a, not sharp movement, but it was just just a little quick movement, but an upward motion of my hand. So a little bit like this, up, and release, yeah? So thinking back to the theory and what the coach was trying to achieve. So again, looking at the breaker rules with going with number 2, which is forward into 2 even reins. So again, by me opening my outside rein, what that was helping me to do was to create that even rein, because remembering what was happening in that lesson, the horse was like bending in the neck to the inside. And remember, in dressage, there's no such thing as neck bend in dressage. So the horse was bending at the neck to the inside. And so by me opening my outside rein, what the coach was helping me to be able to do was to create a little bit more contact on that outside rein, which would help to get the horse a bit more straight in the neck. And then by me bringing my inside rein up a little bit and releasing, what the coach was, I think the coach was honestly trying to do was to stop me from hanging on my inside rein. Because if I'm pulling on my inside rein, there is no way I'm going to be able to get that horse to be straighter in the neck. So by me lifting my hand up, inside rein up and releasing, I think it was just her way on trying to get me to stop hanging on it. Which again, you know, it does make sense. And you know, you've got to again remember, she was trying to get the horse to take my hand. So if you look at the breaker rules, forward into 2 even reins, opening that outside rein to help create even contact, and you know, that inside rein thing, again, to stop me from hanging onto it again to help achieve those even reins. Okay, so now going on to coach number 3. So coach number 3, when they were telling me to ride, well, coach number 3, I will tell you, is the coach who's like my main coach who I have lessons from. And when I ride, they tell me to not open my reins at all and basically to ride from my breaker rules. Now, what that means is, so the reason why they tell me never, ever, ever, and doesn't matter what problem I'm having, don't like open my reins. So like don't open my hand, hang on, okay, see if these are my hands, I'm on an awkward angle, but you'll see what I mean. So don't ever open my hands like that, like don't make them wider. So the reason why they were, my coach was telling me to do that was because if you open, so if you look at the breaker rules and look at steering, remember how I talked about we have to push in dressage, we push the shoulders, don't pull them? Well, if you open your reins and make your reins wider, what you're encouraging the horse to do is to drift. You're encouraging the horse to not only to drop their shoulder and to like drift with it. Because you might have already heard this as well, that people say that your reins control the horse's shoulders. So by you opening the rein, you're basically encouraging the shoulder to go walkabouts, really. Like, I'm sure we've all experienced this. I know I've experienced this. You'll be riding like a 20 meter circle, let's say, to the left, and all of a sudden you can just see the horse's outside shoulders like bulging out. So that is what I like to call a runaway shoulder. Literally, that shoulder is drifting out. And that's something we have to fix. Okay, so that's why my coach says don't ever open the rein. Because yes, even if you don't open the rein, you will have occasions where you lose the horse's shoulder. But, you know, there are strategies and things to implement to fix it. But let's start on the right track and not open them, to not encourage the horse to, drop their shoulder in the first place. So what I'm talking about when I say refer to breaker rules with coach 3 was, so remember, if I'm having trouble getting the horse to take my hand, you have to look at the breaker rules and ask yourself, well, if the horse isn't taking my hand, what am I missing? So think of breaker rules. Breaker rules is like the method of making a cake. Yeah, so what breaker rules helps you to achieve, this is probably getting a bit confusing, but what breaker rules helps you to achieve is to get the horse to take your hand and achieve connection, which is contact in the German training scale. So if the horse is missing one of these elements, there's no way I'm going to get contact, right? So if I'm having issues with my horse not taking my hand, so they're throwing their head up and they just won't take it, even though, so this is coming from a point of view of my horse does know how to take it, but in this situation, for whatever reason, he's throwing his head and not taking my hand. So rather than going straight to opening my reins, I have to look at my breaker rules and go, well, okay, what is lacking? What am I missing that's stopping the horse from being able to take my hand? So, it could be, is the horse forward on his own? So if I'm on that circle and I'm having to kick the horse every single step and he feels like he wants to stop, well, the answer to the horse not taking my rein is, well, kick the horse forward and get him to respect your leg and to stay forward by himself. If I have forward, right, let's move on to number 2. So forward into 2 even reins. So does my left rein have the same amount of weight as my right rein? Do they feel the same? Is the horse's head in the middle, or is he looking too much to the left, too much to the right? Does he have neck bend? So those are the questions you need to ask. And yes, if the horse is looking too much to the inside, then you need to, bring your outside hand back a little bit to straighten the horse up so you do have that even weight and even contact. But if that's not the case, well, look at your steering. Do you have good shoulder control? Or are you pulling your horse around a little bit? Or even not then, are you struggling to move the horse's shoulders? So you're going on a 20-meter circle and you're finding it really hard to push that horse's shoulders around that circle. If that's the problem, then you need to fix that steering. And so what you can do, if you're doing a circle to the left and you're finding it really hard to push that horse's shoulder around that circle, what you can do is take outside flexion and think about sort of leg yielding that horse off your outside leg and rein, like a step to the inside of that circle. That's like another topic in itself, but that's how you could help, that's a strategy you could use to help you fix your steering. And then independent seat. If it's none of these 3, then you have to look at yourself. You have to go, okay, am I unbalanced? Where am I sitting in the saddle? It could even be as simple as you're in your trot, but the horse is setting the tempo and you're not. So if the horse is trotting faster and faster, you're sort of just going with the horse. You're not telling the horse what you want, if that makes sense. So in that case, that just comes to, the rider, you yourself fixing you, which sometimes can be a little bit easier than trying to fix the others because it's just you. So that's basically, in regards to coach number 3, their idea is don't open the rein because you don't want to encourage the shoulders to go for a run. And instead, if the horse is not taking the contact, refer to your breaker rules and go, well, what ingredient to my recipe, I know I'm getting clever now, am I missing? And then work towards achieving that. So what I wanted to do now was just to basically summarize what I was just saying. So basically what guys need to know is whenever you have a lesson with a different coach, or whether you're having this lesson with the same coach, what you need to do is after your lesson, ask yourself, what did you learn? What was the coach asking you to do? What were you trying to achieve by doing that? And ask yourself, number 1, in theory, does it make sense? Like I used the example at the beginning about if I'm trying to achieve self-carriage, is dropping my reins and holding it at the buckles, so there are loops in my reins, going to achieve that? Obviously not. So, ask yourself just from a place of, first of all, common sense, and we all have common sense. So, ask yourself in that regards. Now, once you've answered that question, the next step is you need to then, obviously you need to know your theory. So for dressage, know your German training scale and understand it, and know your breaker rules and understand it as well. Knowing that theory with whatever the coach has told you to do in that lesson, go home and ask yourself, okay, so how does what that coach told me to do, how does that fit in with the theory, with helping to achieve whatever? Which is basically what I said about, the horse taking the contact, for example. Ask yourself, how does what that coach was, coaching me and instructing me to do during that lesson, how does that, fit in with my theory of my sport? Okay, so what I also wanted to mention as well though was you need to also go home and ask yourself, what is your big goal with that horse or with your riding? So like if you're riding a horse that maybe is about to start competing elementary, you've got to ask yourself, does opening my reins, is that actually going to help me get to elementary? Now, I'm going to say, and now look, this is my opinion, this is what I think, and this is why you guys need to ask yourself as well, you know, with whatever situation. But for me, if I go, I'm trying to get my horse to elementary, I don't think opening my reins is that useful or that helpful. I think it is in the moment, but if I think about my goal, if I'm writing an elementary test, obviously it's expected that I need to have a lot of shoulder control, which means, you know, it'd be helpful that, you know, okay, let me start that again. So if I'm trying to get my horse to elementary, obviously shoulder in is introduced, which, you know, means that it's an expectation that I have more control over the horse's shoulders. So if I'm opening my rein, I'm encouraging the horse to drop their shoulder, and I'm basically giving away, you know, control of the horse's shoulders, which in an elementary test, yeah, I can't afford that. So me opening my reins, even though that might give me a, you know, a solution in the moment, it's not going to help me with that goal. Does that make sense? Whereas if it was a horse that was just starting to be trained, was just starting to learn the whole idea about contact, opening the rein, yes, that would have a place there, because opening the rein, number one, it can help you keep your hands a bit more still. Plus, it'll help you as the rider be able to find even in the contact without being a little bit maybe too, you know, closed in and a bit daunting for the horse, if that makes any sense at all. So, yeah, I think definitely taking what you've learned from each coach and then saying to yourself, okay, what's the bigger picture that I'm trying to achieve with this horse? Really, really important thing to do. Now, I also want to add in, because I did say in my Instagram post, put up a question within that post, which is something I was wondering was, okay, well then who's right and who's wrong? What I was talking about, well, then what coach is right and what coach is wrong? And I think I've answered this for myself, and I'll share what my answer is so it helps you. But I don't think any coach is wrong, if that makes sense. I think, remember, people who are coaches, they're coaches because they get results and because they have experience, right? So I think, you know, I don't think any coach is ever wrong, but I think it's our responsibility as the student, as the rider, to choose the coach that is right for us and is right for our horse. Yeah? And choose a coach who you know 100% can help you get to your goal, if that makes sense. So like, you're not going to, you know, take lessons from a coach whose forte is breaking in and getting the foundations on a young horse. If you're trying to get to elementary in dressage, for example, like, you know, and same thing, you're not going to go to a dressage coach who doesn't have maybe that much experience with young horses, or not even that, with like horses that are like just been broken in. You'd probably be better off going to a coach whose like forte is young horses and, you know, the training process and breaking them in, because they'll have a bit more skill to be able to help you. Yeah, so I think, you know, again, I think that responsibility, as I said, comes to us as a rider. No coach is ever, no coach is ever wrong or right. They are coaches, you know, as I said, for a reason, because they have the knowledge and the experience. And then it's our job as the rider to go, okay, is this coach right for me and my horse and the goal I'm trying to achieve? And then it's also our job to take the knowledge we learn from each coach and sit down with ourselves and go, okay, is what this coach saying makes sense? And, you know, based on my, you know, rules to riding, so the German training scale and the breaker rules, is what they're telling me to do make sense, and will that help me, you know, achieve that in theory? Yeah, so I hope that helps. Like, as I said, as I've been doing this video, this is me talking it out loud to myself as well and helping me understand. But I definitely think the responsibility definitely comes to us. No coach is wrong or right. You know, you just have to choose the coach. Again, I think that's going to help you achieve your goal, if that makes sense. And we've got to be smart as riders to go, right, is what this coach is telling me to do, does this make sense in theory? And I think if we sort of stick to that and start thinking about that, that's going to help us heaps and stop us from getting so confused when different coaches tell us to do different things. Now, on that note as well, you know, you can have lessons with different coaches and that's perfectly fine. And it doesn't mean that just because you ride with one coach, you have to change the way you completely ride to ride 100% what they say. Because I think what you can do is you can take what you like from that coach and what you think is effective and what for you and with your theory and with your common sense and your knowledge makes sense. You can take that and apply it to your riding. And same with other coaches, you can take what you like and then just like leave the rest, if that makes sense. Because as I said, I don't think there's ever a wrong or right way to do things, which is what I was always looking for. I wanted like rules. But I think as long as you stick to the theory, you can take what you want from each coach and, you know, apply it to your riding. Like, I guess that's why everyone's riding style is their own. And that's why you have different coaches, because they all have a different training style. They all have a different riding style. You know, and their training style or riding style might fit one rider and one horse better than another. Anyway, so that's just my thoughts on it. I think talking it out to you guys has helped me get a bit clear and a bit better in my own mind about what I'm trying to achieve. And let's just say I don't feel so frustrated now that I've spoken to you guys about it, because I think for me definitely it's clicked. You know, no coach is wrong. Just refer to my theory. Does it make sense? And yeah, will it actually help me achieve that goal? So yeah, I hope this guys has helped you as much as it's helped me, because I know it has. I feel a lot better now, not as frustrated, angry rider as I was when I wrote that post. So yeah, anyway, let me know if this has helped you. Anyway, until next time, bye.